Welcome to the Pathways to Profitability podcast, personal tales of business success, where we hear local business owners' personal stories of their trials and tribulations that got them to where they are today. Here's your host, Cheryl Mucha, CEO of CFO Your Way.
Hello and welcome to Pathways to Profitability podcast. So glad you're here listening in because today is going to be a very unique and different story than our prior episodes. Our guest today is Brody Smith from Stream Your Stories. He is the man behind the scenes of all Pathways to Profitability recordings. Brody, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me on here. It's an honor. It's so bizarre to be on this side of everything, but here we are.
Good.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me be on here.
So Brody, just tell our audience a little bit about who you are and kind of where you are at this first step in your journey.
Sure. So I grew up as a content creator. I was the kid that was making movies and outside, inside, using the parents' camcorder in the attic and doing all kinds of stuff. And then as I got older, I said, I think I might want to make this a career, right? And get into film and then getting into college and doing TV production. And, when people say, you change your mind so many times about what you want to do for a living, you get into college, and I think the average is 3 times you end up changing your mind as to what you want to do. That kind of happened with me. I accidentally got into radio broadcasting, which was a complete left turn. And that's really what I've been doing for the last 15 plus years, all the while still doing video content creation. And that turned into podcasting. And here we are today.
Yes, and I really appreciate you being here. So Brody is at this place in his career where discovering the next step is on the horizon, right? So what does that look like for you? If you had to define where you want to be in 10, 15 years, what does that look like for you?
I got to tell you, Cheryl, that's like the question they ask in an interview. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I'm like, I don't know. I want to see myself financially free. I want to see myself helping people, making an impact, and having fun while we're doing it. But after radio.
So that is the definition of entrepreneurship: having financial freedom, helping people, and just having an impact. So welcome to the journey, right?
Yay. Well, it's just kind of something that happened by accident, really. And I think the combination of the fact that the radio broadcast industry it's just changed over the years.
Right.
And that combined with my path, no pun intended, bringing me to where I'm working with people on their podcasts. Mm-hmm. It just happened to kind of blend together. Right. And I think I'm at a place now where my passion has changed a little bit. So for me, when I can make that impact and know that it's helping, and at the same time you're having a blast,
right?
Then and you're paying the bills,
right?
That really is where I'm steering towards.
Right. And you said one of the other key words is having a passion and following that passion. And I mean, because you've been part of every episode of Pathways to Profitability, it's that passion that drives us. And you never work a day in your life because you're doing what you love and you're helping people along the way.
To me, the show, and I'm not just saying this because you're the boss lady, it's it's all the better when you're interested in the content and the material. And it's been very interesting listening to other people's journey while producing the show and saying, I can relate to this, and I can relate to this. But also the idea that everybody's on that journey everyone's got a different timeline. And when you think you figured it out and you say, I know what my passion is, I'm going to do this indefinitely. This is my thing.
Right.
And however many years down the line it changes, this would be number
Mhm.
3 for me. So that's the strange part about it. And so it's new territory, embracing a new path, a new goal, new
But
focus.
but that's part of growing up, right? We find new interests. Um, the way the world operates changes. Like radio is not as pertinent in people's lives anymore as it once was. Podcasting is the way people communicate or listen, like what people listen to now. So to pivot, big word, right? Pivot and still follow your passion in a different way.
Well, it's interesting because the experience starting out growing up doing video projects,
Mhm,
then combined with learning, being on the other side of things, being a presenter, being on the radio. And this
mhm,
whole video thing it's totally out of my comfort zone, but being on the radio, it's kind of packaged together now how I can help people. It's the production, it's the presentation, it's the marketing. And so what what started out as an accident, radio was never supposed to happen. I
right,
always say that because it's something that started as a total accident in a moment, and I remember the exact moment it happened, and then completely derails my original goal.
right,
And so this path in the podcasting also started as a passion project of mine, which came out of completely changing the course of my focus, being career
right,
focused for so long, and then all of a sudden saying, I got to put my personal life first,
right.
and sidetail that out of my job, and then saying, I want to talk to people who have done this, who have completely taken a change in their trajectory and see what their story is like. And that's where the podcast passion started. And then just getting connected with folks like you, and it's been interesting.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've heard me say it before. It has to happen at that point in life, that point in our journey when we're ready. So 5 years ago, you wouldn't have been ready to do this because over that course of time, you're learning, you're absorbing, and we can talk about mentorship. Like there is a mentor or someone in your life that prepared you for this moment
I knew
to
this was
make
coming.
that. What's that?
I knew this was coming.
um, but it's so true. Like I mean, even for me, like I started the business 10 years ago. I wouldn't have been able to start it 15 years ago or 20 years ago because I wasn't ready. I didn't have the experience and the knowledge to
Sure.
to contribute to my success. Maybe I would have still been successful, but the struggle would have been there more.
Right. Well, because you don't know what you don't know when you don't know
Exactly.
it. Right. If
Exactly.
that makes sense. I find life to be very interesting, where for me, it's been a series of, I don't want to say accidents, but things where you find yourself connecting with that you didn't anticipate connecting with.
Right.
I didn't anticipate getting into podcasting, working with clients. I didn't anticipate getting into radio, and all these trajectories, these life occurrences that completely derailed my plan. Like I'm constantly being derailed, but in
Derailed
a
or
good way.
prepared you for.
Okay. Or maybe guided in another direction.
Right.
I would say that instead of derailed. Derailed is my sense of humor. That's why I use that word. Um, but yeah, it's kind of become one of those things that I was like, "Oh, okay, I can do this. Could be a job. This could be a project. This doesn't just have to be a passion project." Radio didn't have to just be a passion project. Obviously, that evolved into a career. Podcasting didn't have to just be a passion project. That can morph into actual projects,
Right.
working with companies and clients, and being able to bring in some revenue from it.
Right.
But there was nobody who ever really said, well, you should start podcasting, because I feel like everybody says we should start a podcast, but so many people say that now. We should start a podcast, and then when it comes to actually pulling the trigger, nobody pulls the trigger, because everybody just wants to have a podcast because it's the thing to do now.
Right.
But
There's a way to do it right to be successful at it.
Yeah. And I wish I could say there was a person who said, well, you should do this as a job, or as a career. That wasn't really the case. I did have a mentor throughout my radio broadcast career, and she really helped me with figuring out the demographic of the formats we were working in, and what real leadership is like.
Right.
And it's interesting because when you compare so many people you work with, and all of a sudden you go, well, this person's not that person, and this and I don't really like comparing people, but you naturally see not everybody who's in a management position has leadership qualities.
Correct. And it's a big problem. Yes.
Yeah. So that person was probably a mentor in a way where I don't think they were necessarily trying to be, but it wasn't based on what it is that I wanted to do as a job or a career, but it was more of the qualities of leadership and the qualities of working hard. And I think that person used to be my boss for so many years, and she has since turned into one of my best friends.
Right.
And now we can talk shop and we talk personal. So, it was really, that was a big impact on me. And also, like, learning to set your boundaries personally, professionally. And so she had a fairly big impact.
Yeah. So yes, mentor, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mentor, friend, confidant, and now the person that you can have those conversations with and trust that she will be open and honest and truthful with you. And we all need that person in our lives. Not only the business life or the career life, but the personal life as well.
Absolutely. She's also taught me to be more opinionated, which she doesn't hold back, and neither do I.
With your sense of humor, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's what makes the process of working together fun, is, when you're having fun on the journey. We were talking before we started recording this about how I just read this Matthew McConaughey book called Green Lights, and I've been hearing from multiple people, read Green Lights. It's really good. So I got the audiobook because I spent so much time driving, and in it, he has a passage where he says, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And for me, I think, okay, there's a product that we have to create, but because of me being who I am, we're just going to have a blast getting there. So I think that's my sense of humor.
Right. But the journey is the path, right? And I believe that path is predetermined, and we're just walking down it. And whatever, rocks get thrown at us along the way, or learning moments or realization moments that just make us the human that we need to be to take that next step down the path.
It's a roller coaster. I always see it as a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Because you don't know, unless you've been on the roller coaster, but you don't know like what dips are coming up, and you just pray, please don't be a wooden roller coaster. That's all.
Right. Don't let me get stuck at the top of the loop, right?
That's right. I like what you did there.
I don't go on those, so I don't have to face that fear.
But Cheryl, it's so much fun. And
No
the odds of that
thanks.
happening. No, I'm kidding.
I know. 2 feet on the ground, that's the kind of person I am. So let's talk about success. So first step into this next chapter of your life on this journey of life, um, what do you or how do you define success?
Yeah, I've thought about this question so many times because you ask this question all the time. And for me, it's
It's
evolved.
important.
The more I thought about it, it was the idea that I'm bringing something to the table. I'm helping accomplish the pain point, or in this case, the goal.
Mhm.
And I think when you're invested, you're really invested in a project because you have different projects and how much you're invested. I think personally, emotionally, uh, that passion level is going to dictate. It's going to help you exceed expectations. You're going to
Right,
want to do more than what's asked. And again, for me, because I am the way I am, my sense of humor is what it is. That the journey on the way there is going to be fun.
right,
And y- I think because everybody's personality is different, I think that's going to be the key example. It's a lot of people do the same jobs. A lot of people can
right,
accomplish the same tasks, but you work with somebody because of who they are.
right, right. Yeah, just doing a job is not having a passion and not striving for greater goals.
Right. Much like you, much like most people, we've worked with countless people. And if somebody were to say to you, has there ever been a group or has there ever been an individual or a few people that you've worked with that if you can cherry pick who you would continue working with for the rest
Right,
of your life, odds are you'd probably be able to spout off a few names. And I'm
right,
the same way. And I think, to your point of it's not a job, you don't feel like it's a job what you're doing, you're having a blast.
right,
Then when you're working with people that have that same mindset and you don't take yourself seriously, you take what you do seriously, but you don't
right,
take yourself seriously, which is that's totally who I am, then you get to enjoy what you're doing all the more so.
right. And I
So,
think people gravitate to that too because there's so much. I don't want to get into like what's going on in the world, but there's so much negativity and so much backstabbing, and people want to work with people who get it and who are passionate and who are good at what they do and will go that extra mile that you just described.
well, I think when you like the people that you work with,
Exactly.
and and then the icing on the cake is you're invested in the
Hmm.
material, in the service, the product, whatever it is that you're a part of, you just naturally want to do more.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah. And I talk to a lot of people every day, every week, and there's a lot of people out there that don't get that. And
it's
it's devastating because I mean, I preach kindness and the world can be a better place and all this. So many people are it's just about them and what can you do for me? Whereas if we have the mentality of give first and give 110%, 125% first, it's a different world we live on. It's a different planet we live on.
when you had mentioned before about mentorship and people who have made an impact or influenced, Gary Vee immediately with what you just said came to my mind, who I found in 2020, literally as the pandemic hitting us, is somebody
Mhm.
told me about Gary Vee. And then somewhere along that same time, Simon Sinek, who's also getting those two guys in the same room for me. It's
Right.
like who you want to meet, evolves.
Mhm.
Like back in the day, it was like Lady Gaga would be so cool. And now I'm like, if I'm in the same room with Gary Vee and Simon Sinek, I feel like I'm going to fangirl. And
Right.
because the whole Gary Vee mentality of just put it out there, put it out there. You're going to
Right.
end up, if you can help people, and you don't need, you don't need anything out of that. You don't need anything in exchange. You're just putting it out there saying, I just want to help.
Right.
That's going to end up coming back to you.
Absolutely.
So
I agree 100%. And it's a mindset. It's it's a way of life.
and I think to comment on your point of people just being in that same circle, doing the same thing,
Mhm.
that's part of what got me into podcasting is when I changed my focus for a minute and go, I got to put my personal life first. And that's how the podcast started. Because I want to talk to people who have completely taken that left turn
Right.
and got off. I always use the same analogy, got off the hamster wheel.
Right.
You're in that same mode. You're a zombie. Yeah.
And they're miserable and their life just passes them by. Like, I don't want to be that person. I never was that person.
Well, as my therapist would say, everybody's asleep. Nobody's self-aware. Everybody is in that same until something happens. This is
Right.
what I discovered with my life audit podcast was for some people it's a health thing,
Hmm.
or it's for one guy it was, well, I want to spend more time with my family.
Right.
And for somebody else, it was, well, if I don't quit this career and this job, it's going to put my personal life and in that case, his marriage in jeopardy.
Right.
So, and then and then it's a whole different thing learning, well, how are my skills that I've grown and mastered here? How can I, and I went through that too. Ask any radio broadcast person, well, what would you do if this didn't work out? And they'd be like, I don't know.
Right. Right.
And how you can implement skills that you've learned in one craft, in one career, in a completely different thing.
Right.
But being, and then that creates that takes you out of your comfort zone. Maybe that's why people don't get off the hamster wheel. I'm in my comfort zone. I know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
The devil that
I'm
you know is
comfortable.
better
I'm
than the.
collecting a paycheck, right?
That's right. I've had a friend say, "Take the paycheck,"
Right.
but until consider where else can I go, and how else can I implement these skills, and that creates uncomfortableness, and nobody likes to be uncomfortable. I mean, some
But that's
people, I
where the
suppose,
great
say they do.
discoveries are made, right?
I've seen so many memes like that lately, Cheryl.
Yeah,
So
it's
but it's true.
fascinating. It's so true. So how can our audience get in touch with you? I know, the podcast with us, you're working with others. How do they get in touch with you to tap into your skills?
So I'm going to direct people to my website. Let me pop it up here on the screen, streamyourstories.com. And on there, people can learn more about me. I put some tips, content creation tips like audio, how to get good audio quality, lighting, live streaming. I share some of that stuff on my homepage just to kind of help people the basics, because you don't have to have a massive budget to be
Right.
able to do your own podcast if that's what you want to do, or if you want to be active on social media. You don't have to have a huge budget. A lot of it is just understanding basics of,
Right.
if you're recording a podcast, then don't be at a construction site, or if you're doing a video podcast, don't do it so the window's behind you and that's your own lighting, your only lighting source, and tips like that. But it's also, I have my podcast. I have an audio podcast, the live stream podcast on there that I had referenced during this interview, to kind of give people, a little idea if that's an interest, or also how I work and some of my work as well. And it's got my email, it's got my social media handles. So streamyourstories.com. I'm also on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Brody Radio. Brody.
Okay, perfect. And we'll make sure we have all that information in the show notes. But what you just said goes back to the give first mentality. So your website is chock full of information that people can use as soon as they read it. And I love that, having that easy availability and just giving to whoever decides to go to the website some great information.
I mean, look, if you don't love seeing other people win, there's something wrong.
Right.
And
Exactly.
for me, I think that's been a thing. You know, even now, I'm still working in radio at the time of this recording, and I love working with clients on their ads,
Hmm.
even though that's not necessarily my super focus, doing radio
Ad con.
advertising. But
Hmm.
it's, you know, it's sometimes you think what somebody else already knows, they don't necessarily know, and you bring a different perspective. And
Right.
you know, so
And you have such an attention to detail with the lighting and the sound and the background fireplace
oh yeah, I
ambiance.
love your
Love it.
fireplace. See, Cheryl,
So
I don't, I'm in an apartment. I don't have a fancy fireplace where I could just get the remote. I could grab the
not
remote
yet.
and go,
You
"Woo,
don't have yet,
fireplace."
right?
Ah.
You just unlocked your car.
I do have an app for that, but I will say this: you need to get it so Alexa can turn on your fireplace where you don't have to use your remote. That's
There you
all I'm
go. I'll rely on you to teach me how to do that.
oh, okay. I guess I got to learn that now.
Well, Brody, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
It
Thanks for
was
having me on
so
here. I feel
great.
so awkward being on camera, but that, you know,
You
whatever.
did great.
Thank
Absolutely
you.
great. And our
Thank
audience
you.
is going to get so much information. And to our audience, thank you for listening in and reach out to Brody. He is the best of the best. And we have so much fun recording these episodes. So look for all of our episodes to Pathways to Profitability podcast. And thank you so much for joining us.
That's it for today's episode of Pathways to Profitability. Remember to ask yourself, where can I pay my success forward today?